I am Gregory Hall, here in the home of Mr. Billy Lindsey on January the 24th, 2008. And we're going to talk in an interview on behalf of the Fannin County Historical Commission. And we're ready to start right now. And I will have a question or two, and we'll listen to Mr. Lindsey. Were you born in Fannin County?
Yes, sir. I was born, let me get it right, on the corner of 11th and Pecan Street in Bonham. My daddy worked for his father, my grandfather, in the Lindsey dairy. It was the only, I guess it was the only production dairy in Fannin County. He owned it, my grandfather did. He owned it and the Bonham ice cream parlor. Now, there's a lot of people don't remember the Bonham ice cream parlor, but there was one there.
I do.
And if you've ever been in Mike's, my oldest son's home, did you notice the chandelier over his kitchen table? Pay attention to that chandelier because it come from over the back bar in the ice cream plant. It's a big deal like that, and it's got clusters of red and blue grapes all the way around, and it's cut glass put together with lead. It's a beautiful chandelier, really a pretty thing. And Daddy worked down there. He milked 75 head of cows twice a day by hand. And him and one more man. The man's name was Ralph Moody.
Now, who was your father? Let's get his name.
B.A. Lindsey.
Right. You remember your grandfather's name?
Yes, sir. Woodson Wade Lindsey. It was his name. And they worked there, and Lindsey got out of it and went to West Texas. My grandfather did. Went to Lubbock. He died in Lubbock. Died sitting up in a chair. He was a short, real heavy man. In fact, the doctors told my daddy, he says, his heart, every time it beats, picks up 7 pounds of fat. That's how big and heavy he was. And he went out there and, I was 6 years old when he died, so that'll give you an idea.
And when were you born?
I was born in 1926, May the 1st, 1926.
You mentioned the dairy. Did other people bring dairy products like milk to him, or did he have his own cows?
He had his own cattle.
Everything?
He produced everything right there, and he had a milk route. Now, if you can talk Mike out of it, he'll show you some of the bottles that my grandfather used, milk bottles. And it's got the Lindsey dairy, on it. I think he got a quart bottle and maybe a pint or a half a pint. I don't remember which. I got a hold of them. I found them, and I give them to Mike to keep.
Now, was his milk route there in Bonham, or did he go out into the county?
No, in Bonham.
Right there in Bonham.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And he furnished milk for the ice cream plant.
Now, just before we go on into the subsequent years there, do you have any information or want to mention anything about how your family came to this county?
I have no earthly idea. None. I do know that my mother's family come from Searcy, Arkansas.
Yes.
And the best that I can find out, of course I never did try too hard to find out, he loaded up one night just before dark, and he left Arkansas and come to Texas. He is in Texas before the sun come up the next day. Now don't ask me why, because I don't know. I can't find out. I've never been to Searcy, Arkansas, really to find out, because I really didn't care. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
It didn't make any difference to me what the old man had done in Arkansas. They kind of raised me, took care of me a whole lot. And I liked to, they were farmers. My mother's folks were farmers. And
around here in Fannin County?
Yes, sir. Yeah. They lived out here in Fannin County.
And what was her name?
Huckabee.
Huckabee.
Her name was Huckabee, Alpha Lee. That was my mother's name. Alpha Lee Huckabee.
Now, I believe your father was also a fireman here.
He was a fireman, and his picture is in the big group picture there at the fire hall. And the best of my recollection and what he has told me and Mother told me, when the oil mill burned in Bonham, the dead of winter, and they all got down there fighting this fire, and somebody come up with a quart fruit jar of Wildcat whiskey, and they got to passing it down the hose, and everybody got a little bit drunk, and they did all right until they got the fire all put out and everything, and they went to the cafe up there in town. I think it was Joe Loy's Cafe, if I remember right. And they got to putting sugar in everybody's coffee. And of course, by the time Daddy got home, he was really, sure enough, drunk and sick. And my mother had him up the next morning washing quilts where he had vomited all over everything. She had him out there punching a wash pot. They didn't have the conveniences that they've got now. Sure. They had wash pots. But I can remember that real well. I was just a big kid, but I remember Daddy and Mother talking about it, laughing and cutting up about it.
Now, when you said the oil plant, what was that, a gasoline plant? Or
no, sir.
What was it that burned?
Well, I don't really know. I just know it was an oil mill down there. Okay. I don't really remember exactly what it was.
But I think your father was also there when the courthouse burned.
I saw my father go across the square at an angle to the fire. And I was, I think, about 3 years old, and I can remember as if it was yesterday. He picked me up, and somebody had parked a Model A Ford pickup there on the corner. And maybe this thing may be picking that up. And he picked us up, picked me up and set me up in the seat. And I watched him out the back glass go across over there. And he was on the 3rd floor when the bell went down. And the bell went right straight down through to the bottom. For years and years and years, I had a piece of that bell, but it's moving around. I guess I've lost it. I don't know. I can't find it in here, and it was about that thick. Just a chunk of it, you know what I'm saying. And I kept it, but I don't know what their intentions are doing now about restoring the courthouse. I'm really not in favor of it. I think it's crazy myself. That's my own personality. Yes. Because there's so many things in Bonham that need to be done worse than that does.
Yes. So you, though, remember that experience, remembering your father set you there in the car,
Yes, sir.
and you could watch from.
I stood up in the seat and watched out the back glass as he run across the street there to go in that building and go to fighting that fire, trying to put it out.
And that was 1929.
That was 1929.
Yes.
I can remember that just as plain as if it was yesterday.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
But I guess the older you get, the more you remember back. Like yesterday, I don't remember what we did yesterday, but I do know what happened years ago.
Sure.
I don't know why that works, but that's the way it is. I heard that all my life, and I didn't believe it, but it's so. It's really so.
So you were a young boy growing up in Bonham,
Yes, sir.
around the square,
Yes, sir.
knowing the town
Yes, sir.
from an early age,
Yes,
with
sir.
memories, as you say, going back that far.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, on northeast corner of the square, the sidewalk goes down kind of like that. You know? Are you familiar with
Yes.
that? As it went down at the bottom, there was a poultry house. Clotfelter Poultry House. And us boys used to go up there and buy old game roosters. And that's where I got initiated into fighting roosters.
Yes. Now, was that right off the square there, or on
Just
the
a
square?
block off of the
Just
square?
a block off
Yes,
the
sir.
square.
Just a block off. Sure was. Well, you know where the post office is.
Yes.
All right, across the street, that block across the street, Ike Biggerstaff had a horse barn. He had saddle horses. Excuse me, and he bred mares down there. That is on the east end of this block. Had a big building there, and it had stalls in it. And that's where they kept their stallions and all this kind of stuff and riding. Ms. Biggerstaff had a big pinto stud horse. They called him Pepper. And one of the nicest animals you ever saw. But you did not want to wash him and get him ready for her to ride and put him back in his stall. Because if you did, he would. He did things he didn't need to do.
You wanted to go?
No, he would urinate
Oh, okay.
and bowels would move.
Uh-huh.
Then he'd lay down in it.
Oh, gosh,
You'd
okay.
have to do it all over again. So when you give him a bath, you put a halter on him and snapped him over here to a post
Yes.
where he couldn't do this kind of stuff because he would do it. And he had him, Mr. Ike did, and he had a Tennessee walking horse, big red roan Tennessee walking horse. Oh, he was a monstrous horse, about 16, 17 hands tall. And he was a real nice animal to ride. And Mr. Joe Harridge had a Palomino stud horse in there. And he was the meanest dadgummed animal I ever saw. I whipped him with a spoke out of a wagon wheel. I tried to kill him, to be honest, but he reached over the stall and caught me on the shoulder right here and bit me. And I grabbed up this spoke and I went in there and I like to beat that horse to death. Wherever I could hit him, that's where I hit him. Head, back end, or whatever, that's where I was putting that spoke on him.
Now, was that called a livery stable? Would that have been a livery stable? Or let me ask you it this way. Did people in town who owned horses keep them there at that stable?
They could, yes, sir. They sure could. And they rode them. They'd go off. They had a tack room there, and everybody had their saddles and everything there. Mr. Pood Chafin had a saddle, and I got permission from Mr. Pood Chafin to use this saddle. It had a great big dinner plate horn on it. It was a Mexico saddle. And it had 3 girts on it. And I loved to ride it, but it fit me. And that's the saddle I used all the time I was down there.
Now, were you working there for
No.
the establishment, or were
No,
you
no.
just a young fellow
I just
in
a
the
kid,
area?
I was just a kid
Yeah.
hanging out down there because I liked it.
Would he have been 10 or 12 years old? Or...
Oh yeah, I was that old. And right across the street back in there, behind the post office and everything, was a jockey yard where gypsies come in, and they had every first Monday trade day. And the school teachers would call my daddy and say, "Do you know where Billy is today?" Daddy'd say, "This is the first of the month." "Yes, sir." "Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I know exactly where he is. He's down there on that jockey yard." And he said, "There's not a bit of use in you going down there because you can't find him because he'll see you and he'll hide." And I would. I stayed down there all day. That was back when you could swap a donkey for a pocket knife. Or, this, it was mules and horses and goats and hounds, just any and everything was. They brought them in and did their swapping down there. Out on 78, I can't tell you exactly where it is, but I can take you and show you. There was a spring come down on the west side of the road and went across the highway, under the highway, and emptied out in this big lot out here. And that's where the gypsies all congregated.
And was that north of town?
That's north of town, yes, sir. And they would come to town, and there was one grocery store there on the east side of the square by the name of W.L. Pratt. My daddy worked there. And I'd go up there and I'd watch them gypsies. They'd go over to where the lemons were. And they'd go through it, and they'd buy every little lemon they could find. And soda. They'd buy cases of soda. Well, that beat my curiosity. Now, I really did want to know what the devil is doing. So I followed them out to this camp place. And they were taking those lemons and sticking them up a horse's nose. You take an old wind-broke horse, you can hear him breathe everywhere. And when you fill that nose full of them limp little lemons, he'd breathe just as normal as any horse you ever saw. They wouldn't cut him open or anything, they just stuffed up in that hole. And an old horse that was just skin and bones, you give him a big dose of soda, and he'd swell up, get real fat. And I've seen some of the doggonedest fights up there you ever saw. A farmer'd swap a good mule for a horse, and he'd take him home, and before he'd get home, the horse would cough. Out come them lemons, and you could hear him breathing.
Now, was that a treatment, though, to help the horse's breathing, the use of the lemons like that?
That was I take a wind-broke horse, you can hear him breathe. His breathing is real coarse and ragged. And these lemons would quieten that down.
So they could trade him?
So they could trade him.
I see.
So they could trade him.
Long enough to trade him.
That's right. If the horse didn't cough, he was breathing real good. And the farmer would swap for him and tie him to the back of the wagon and start home with him, and he'd sneeze, and out come these little lemons, and you could, I'm telling you what, I have seen some real hard, bad fights up there. It was real interesting for, a kid. It would be interesting today, but not like it was back then.
Now, you said they were gypsies. Did they spend just a part of their month or year here, or did they travel around to other communities?
They traveled. They were in wagons and teams, and they traveled. They knew Bonham's was the first Monday in the month, and that's when they would congregate down here. And this man told them, says, "I don't mind you staying there because this spring has got a surface water there, and you can water your stock and just don't leave a mess." And they never left a mess. When they left, you didn't know that they had been there. They were very, very particular about keeping this area because it was so handy for them and everything. You know, they kept it clean. They were very clean with it.
Now, did they bring any of their livestock into town, or did people go out there?
No,
and
they'd
trade
bring
with
they
them out
would
there
they would bring them to this jockey yard
in town?
in town. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, which was opposite, back behind the courthouse, back behind the
Post office. Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they was right back in there.
So a jockey yard was a place where they just traded horses and donkeys and things of that sort,
Yeah.
and maybe harness and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had see back then. There was automobiles, of course, but they didn't everybody. Farmers didn't have an automobile. They used wagons and teams. They come to town in a wagon and team, and they would go and. Well, Saturday was what they called a butter and egg day. The farmers come to town and brought their women folks would gather up all the eggs, and they would save them, and they'd have butter, that homemade butter, you know, in the grocery stores they would buy them, and they would buy these eggs, and my daddy took a cigar box and rigged up a light globe in behind it, and he cut a hole, a little bigger than a silver dollar, not much, and he could hold that egg up to that light and see whether it was good or not. It's called kindling eggs. And he had a little thing there in that grocery store, a little stall, and he'd go back in there, and it was dark, and he turned his light on, and he'd kindle these eggs. And if they were good, he'd buy them. If they weren't good, he'd put them back in another box. And the butter, of course, had to be fresh. And the meat market man would keep the eggs and stuff like that in there.
Was that a part of his dairy business?
No.
General?
No. This was after the dairy business closed. See, the ice cream plant, when my granddad left, I believe it was the Sabine Valley ice cream plant bought this business out. And a man by the name of Jim Cameron run it. And he run it there for, years and years. And then the ice cream plant moved over across the square over on the southeast corner of the square was a drugstore called McGuirk's drugstore. McGuirk died and they went out of business, and the Sabine Valley moved in that building, that corner building.
Let's think again about what it was like on a Saturday, as you said. You call that butter and
egg day.
And so families were coming in from around in
Yes, sir.
county.
All you farmers would come in to Bonham. They bought their groceries and their supplies, whatever they needed. That's when they come to town and bought it. That's right.
And would that have been in the early 30s? We're talking about
yes,
the early 30s now?
Yeah, Sure would. Early 30s.
Would they tend to bring their own lunch or food for the day, or would
Most
they eat
of
in
them,
cafes
most
around the
of
area?
them brought their own groceries to eat. Yeah, they did, because they didn't have the money to go to cafes. Mm-hmm. Back then, they farmed strictly with mules and with teams. You didn't see a tractor, hardly ever saw a tractor. It was all animal work, you know. And
of course, I guess they did a lot of visiting, standing around the square.
Oh, yeah. Sam Rayburn would come to Bonham, and he'd come to town. And if you didn't know Mr. Sam, you wouldn't recognize him. He'd have on a pair of bibbed overalls and an old blue jumper and an old slouch hat. And wherever you saw him standing, there'd be a congregation of men around. Sam Rayburn was a man's man. You know what I'm saying? He he could get down on the farmer's level, or he could get with Mr. Rich Man. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I knew Mr. Sam personally. He was a wonderful man, and he loved Bonham. Now, he always said, when I go home, I know I'm at home. I've been in his home out here on the highway, and I went out there several times and visit with Mr. Sam, and if I had a problem or anything, I'd go out there and talk to Mr. Sam about it. You know, and things like that. And he is, a lot of people don't know this, but I happen to know it. He is the daddy to the VA Center in Bonham. You know, it's called Sam Rayburn Memorial Hospital.
Sure.
It was not built and named that way.
What was it named as?
Veterans Administration.
Yes.
And they come that close to closing it.
Yes.
Well, we all had one man there that was raised with Sam. And he said, I'll get on the telephone and I'll call him. And he called Mr. Sam, and Mr. Sam, we was all sitting down there at the shops waiting to find out whether we had a job or not. Well, this old man jumped in his car, and he took off, and he come back in a little bit, and he said, boys, don't worry. He said, we've got a job. Mr. Sam will put a stop to this.
Now, were you working at the VA hospital there?
Yes, sir.
When did you start working there? Do you recall?
Yes, sir, I sure do, 1951. Yes, sir. I was 23 years old when I walked in that building out there, and I did not know myself one thing about steam. I knew it would burn you, and that's all I knew about steam. And I worked in there, and I learned as I went, trial and error. Of course, I knew about plumbing and sewer lines and mains and water mains and things like that. I knew about those. But steam lines, I did not know anything about at all. But I had to learn it because I wanted the job. I was working at Reese Air Base in Sherman. Not Reese, Perrin. Reese was in Lubbock. I worked at Lubbock for a while. And I transferred back to Bonham, and then I went back to Sherman over at Perrinville.
Did you work at the VA Center here until you retired, or?
I retired out there for 31 years.
For 30.
Yes, I stayed out there 31 years and had to take a disability retirement. Feet and legs played out. I had to have surgery on my feet. And then after several years of retirement, my knees finally just played plumb out. I couldn't hardly walk at all. And
well, of course, Mr. Rayburn was also connected with the Lake Fannin project.
Mr. Rayburn was connected with anything that pertained to Fannin County. Anything big, any project that was big, Mr. Sam Rayburn had his finger in it. You can bet on that. He sure did. They had boys that were on the streets, couldn't get a job, couldn't find a job. They joined the 3 C's, and they give them a job, and they put them to work, and they built that out there.
We were talking about Mr. Rayburn before we get away from that. Do you have any other memories of Mr. Rayburn you'd want to mention, either from his coming to visit the VA Center here or just knowing him around town?
Oh, I knew Sam. He was one of the finest men. They used to have a bed called a Hollywood bed. And what it was an iron bedstead, and they'd cut the headboard and the footboard, the head, the front, you know. Mm-hmm. They cut them off because it was a kind of a curved outfit, you know. And they called them Hollywood beds, and that's what Mr. Sam slept on. He sure did. A lot of people don't know that Sam Rayburn had been married, but he had. I don't know whether you knew that or not.
I did know that, yes.
I don't know how long they stayed together, but it wasn't very long. And you never heard him mention anything about Mr. Sam being married. At one time, he went back up there to the house, and he told him, said, I slept last night between two of the most beautiful women in the world. I slept between both of them. One of them was on this room, one on this room, and I was in the middle room, and I slept between them.
Was that up there in Washington? Or
yes, sir, that was in Washington.
In Washington
somewhere. Yes,
somewhere.
sir. And he got the biggest kick out of telling people that you ever saw.
Yes, yes.
He was a jovial man. He loved a good joke, and he'd tell that and just die laughing.
Bailey English, when he died.
I went to school in Bailey English.
Yes.
I sure did. Big red building.
Oh, before they built the present building.
Oh, you bet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that building.
Big, tall, red brick building. Yeah, I went to school there. That's where I started out in school. I was 6 years old. And the reason that I remember it so plain, my granddaddy died the year I was 6 years old. And my daddy went to town and bought me a yellow slicker. It was raining and cold and bad, and I was the proudest thing of that yellow slicker you ever saw in your life. And I lived on Chestnut Street, and I walked down to the Bailey English School, and I'd wear that yellow slicker. No, I was tickled. I was proud of that yellow slicker. And that was a long time ago, and a slicker like that, it cost a bunch of money. What didn't cost, I say a bunch of money, that was back hard times.
Yes.
And a bunch of money could have been 75 cents.
Yes.
I was in a store yesterday, and I asked this young lady if she had any Levi Strauss breeches. She said, no, I don't. And she says, did you ever wear them? I said, lady, I bought them when they were $2.50 a pair, and you bought a pair of them a size too big because you could boil them and they'd shrink to fit.
Yes.
And she just died laughing. Said that was the old 501.
Uh-huh.
And the old 501, there wasn't no such thing as old 501 back then. It was Levi's.
Right.
And the little jackets, the little unlined jackets were, I think they cost about $2.75, something like that. And the little blanket lined jacket was, I think it was something like $5.50, $7, something like that. It wasn't really expensive, but back then, $2.50 was a whole lot of money.
Now, is that what most boys wanted to wear?
Oh yeah,
in school?
yeah. Well, we was all rowdy boys, I guess you'd say. We done a little bit of everything. If there was a horse come by and we thought one of us could ride it or couldn't ride it, we'd bet him that he couldn't ride it, and of course, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I rode more horses than I ever drove an automobile.
Now, would that have been just around town or out in surrounding places where farmers had cattle?
That is anywhere. Yeah. That is anywhere, yeah. Of course, the kids all come to school up here, and we'd all congregate together, and we'd go out to one of them's house, and them calves, they'd turn them down there in the pasture, and if we could catch a calf, that was rodeo.
Sure.
Rodeo right there. We'd catch them calves and try to ride them and all that kind of stuff. But
So you say people were visiting, of course, around the square.
oh yeah, yeah.
Was there any kind of entertainment later in the day, or when did people start going home?
They'd start going home. They'd try to get home before dark so they could do up their work. They had the cows to milk, chickens to feed, hogs to slop.
Were the movie houses going on then at that early, or when? Do you remember when they came to town?
No, they were already here. Now there was the best theater was on the south side of the square, and you went up the block and down south to the American Theater. And on the west side of the square there was a movie house called The Elite. And that is where Gracie's Cafe is now.
Right.
And I ushered there, and I was in high school. I ushered there so many nights a week. When Gone the Wind come to Bonham, I ushered every performance of that show. And I ushered it enough that when I went back to school and we had to give book reports, I give a book report on Gone with the Wind and made a straight A on it. Never even saw the book. I sure did.
So they had ushers in the movie houses then. Were you taking people to their seat?
I would take them to their seats, and if there was anything unruly went on, I would go down with a flashlight and quieten it down. Now, the best theater, they on the south side of the square, Miss Marion Googe's. Do you remember Marion Googe?
Just by name.
His mother had a little machine there. She sold popcorn and peanuts. A nickel a sack. And made a good living at it. And Saturdays, boy, there was Cowboy Day at the best theater. And it would get so intense, the odor would get so intense, unwashed bodies and soured feet that you could hardly stay in there. And Miss Delia Betty Roberts was the ticket agent. She'd come out there and she'd say, "Bill, it's getting a little bit strong. Can you help me?" I'd go back there at the back, and they didn't have air conditioners like they've got now. They had evaporative fans blowed through this water. And they used, I know you've seen them, these old pump spray cans to spray fly dope out. Well, now we had a big one. I'm talking about it'd hold a quart. Well, I would fill it full of Evening in Paris. That was a perfume. And I'd pump enough of that in there that you could smell it out on the street. But now it would kill that odor. Yes, it would. And I'll never forget it. The seats in this theater, the theater part run north and south. But the seats were east and west. And I kept hearing a racket down there one Saturday afternoon. And I'm telling you, what is the awfulest racket you ever heard in your life? Well, I got my flashlight and I went down through there looking, and I could see something running north and south under them seats. Well, I got everybody to move out of this particular seat, the row of seats, you see. And I went down through there, and there was a farmer, drunker than a stewed owl, had gotten under these seats. I like to have never got him out of there. But I got him out and took him on the outside and set him on the curb. Man, I'm telling you what, he was making off a racket you ever heard in your life.
Well, did they stop the show while all that was going on?
Oh, no. Them cowboys was fighting them Indians, just going and coming. And I was there trying to get him out of there and being as quiet as I could.
Being an usher, I guess.
Oh, it was a sight.
Do you remember any of the projectionists at the time who ran the machine or anything of that sort? That must have been
Alvin
exciting.
Reeves is a colored boy, and he learned to operate that machine. And Buster, I cannot remember his last name. Of course, he's dead and gone. His wife's dead. Buster something, I can't remember. If she was here, she could probably tell you this that quick, but I can't. He was the head projectionist. H.S. Cole owned the theaters. And the Elite. Now the Elite, that was a swanky movie house.
Different kind of show there too.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. They had that. And Saturday night, 10 o'clock or 10:30 till midnight was most of the time was a horror movie or some kind of a scary movie, and all the kids went to that. And of course, I had to be there ushering it. I'd close the best theater down and come around to the American and help work control that. It was a job, believe me, it was. And I was making the grand total of $1.50 a night. That don't sound like much, does it?
No.
But it was a whole lot of money. Of course, I got any picture show I wanted to go see, I guess go see it. It didn't cost me anything. But that was $1.50, and we all met after the 10:30 and everything. All the ushers would go around on the south side of the square, and Joe Loy had Loy's Cafe. We went in there and sat down, and we'd all eat a hamburger and drink soda pops or a milkshake or something like that. And I put that dollar in the bank every Monday morning. And I was a kid growing up, I owned a pair of cowboy boots. Well, Mr. Pete Hossel run a haberdashery there in Bonham on the south side of the square. And they was a pair of no-corner cowboy boots there. They was the prettiest things that I ever saw in my life. It was kid skin. Oh, it was just as soft and pliable, chocolate brown. I'll never forget them. And up the leg looked like a stem with a big red rose on top of it. $45. That's how much they were. Well, I went in there and I talked to Mr. Hossel. I didn't have $45. I said, I want to pay down on them boots and pay them out by the week. He said, all right. Yeah, I'll let you do that. Well, kid, I thought I was going to get to take them home. But Mr. Hossel said, you can't take them boots home until you pay for them. Now, I'm going to tell you, I done any and everything I could do to get the money to pay for them boots. And when I went in there the last time, I said, Mr. Hossel, here's your money. I want my boots. Tommy Gill Housing worked there. And Tommy went back there. There's no corners. Tommy went back there and he come back there with this box and he opened it up and it all wrapped in tissue paper and everything, and he unwrapped them. I put them boots on. Man, I was 9 feet tall. Oh yeah, I was 9 feet tall. I was the happiest kid you ever saw. But I'd done everything to make the money to pay for them boots. Now I'm talking about I'd done everything. If anybody had anything that needed to be done, I done it because I wanted that pair of boots. John Pierce had a Wimpy's hamburger joint. That's what it was called, Wimpy's Hamburger. That was down Panther Row.
I was fixing to ask you if that wasn't on Panther Row, because I had many a hamburger there.
On Panther Row. And do you remember Dobson's dry goods store? Do you remember that?
Not in detail, but I know
all right.
the name.
Dobson would go, say over at Sherman, the big grocery store had burned out. We'll just use Sherman for an illustration. This grocery store had burned out. Everything was water soaked. He'd go in there and buy it. And that flour, sacks of flour would be just as hard as a brick. And he would hire people to go in there and they'd take this flour out of this sack. And they used something, I don't remember now what it was, but they would rub this flour until they got it back into flour consistency, and he'd sack it and sell it to you.
Now, was that on Panther Road?
That's on Panther Road. It sure was. Yes, sir. Elkins had a grocery store down there. And let's see. Upstairs, over Wimpy's, John Pierce had a domino hall. To go into it, you just walked right up on the sidewalk, and there was a door there. You knocked on that door, and it'd open. When you stepped in there, there was a flight of stairs going up, and this door behind you would close and lock. And the door up here in front of you, or you'd knock on that door. And the man looking at you, you didn't see him, but he was up there. And if he didn't know you, this door behind you would open up and you'd better leave. Mm-hmm. But if he knew you, this door in front of you would open up and you'd go on upstairs and you'd play poker and shoot dice and dominoes, just whatever you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Well, I knew, I'll tell you how this all come about now, how I knew him. I worked and sold and delivered Pepsi Cola. Lonnie Henniger and I worked for Lonnie on the truck, and we delivered Pepsi Colas all over town. And John had this big cafe, Wimpy's Cafe, and we have to take them Pepsi Colas in the building. And then this is before they had refrigerated boxes. They had a box sitting there, and it'd be water and a block of ice in there. In July and August, them soda pops is hot. Now I'm talking about Mr. D was hot. And you'd raise that lid up just enough to clear that bottle, and you'd slide that bottle in and drop it down in this cold water and shut the lid down on it, keep it from blowing up on you. And they would bust. I ought not to tell this, but it's God's truth. I had to do the collecting. If I delivered the cases in there, I had to go back in another room back there and get the money for them. Well, John and Ruby Sloan, I don't know whether you ever knew them or not, but John owned the place, John Pierce, and Ruby Sloan was his girlfriend. And she was married to Delmer Sloan. And she was a great big fat woman. I'm talking about big. Now she's big as one side of the house. And she'd be laying up there on this bed about half dressed. John'd be sitting there on the bed and he'd say, "What the hell do you want?" Well, I said, "Mr. John, I've got a bill here for some soda pops I've delivered." "Okay." "How much is it?" I'd tell him, he'd just count the money out. I'd just go on about my business. But now that was embarrassing as anything in the world to this kid, you know.
Now, were they living there at the back end of the domino hall?
No, Ruby and Delmer had a place out on 56. And they had a real nice farm out there. And John stayed out there and lived with them. But John and Ruby run this Wimpy's Cafe. And it was, I'd back to this gambling part upstairs. They wouldn't let me go up them stairs. I was just a kid. "No, hell no, don't you come up here." Well, I'd go around in the back alley, and there was a sewer line, a pipe went up the side of the wall. Well, I could climb that. And I'd climb up there, and there was a window there. It'd always be open for ventilation. And I'd just go up in this window, and first thing you know, I'd be at one of them crap tables shooting dice, and John or Delmer would look up and see me, and they'd catch me with a shoulder, "You little so-and-so," and out the back door he'd say, "Don't you know you can't beat me? I own this place. You ain't no way you can beat this house." And he'd kick my little butt out the front door. Yeah, it was, and every chance I'd get, I'd slip up there, because it was exciting, you know, a kid. And I would go up there and shoot dice. all that kind of stuff.
Were there many other places like that around the square?
No, sir, they were not.
Just that one?
Just that one place.
Now,
So-
we're still talking about the 30s, or are
Yes,
we
sir.
into the 40s yet?
Oh, we're not in the 40s. This was in the 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. But they went on into the 40s, the early 40s. Yeah, they sure did. But it was, back then it was, a kid growing up back then had more innocent things to do than what they've got to do today. You know what I'm saying? We didn't go out here and have gang fights, try to kill one another and all that kind of stuff. If we had a fight, it was your fist, or it was a ring and 8 links. And a ring and 8 links is a ring off a trace chain with 8 links chain on the end of it. And that was as near as what we could do. You know, we couldn't. If a kid found a pair of brass knucks, now he is dangerous. He was dangerous as he could be. He sure was. But this day and age is altogether different. You understand? We didn't have any such thing as dope. Most thing we had was Charlie Ferris had a room out of a house on the jockey yard, and he bought hides. And all the kids had a pretty good old dog. We'd catch these possums and skin them out and go down there and swap them to Charlie for homebrew. He made the best homebrew in the town. 2 bits a bottle, 15 cents for a hide, and he paid the difference to get you a bottle of homebrew. And that's something else that kids don't know anything about today. But it was homebrew. That and whiskey was about the only thing that was a kid could get into then, and steal his daddy's tobacco and stuff like that. But I was laughing at one of my grandsons here the other day. He's talking about rolling cigarettes. Well, the first tobacco I ever smoked was Kite. You can still buy Kite, and it was the first mentholated tobacco. I smoked it in a pipe. It was good and rolled a cigarette. Then I graduated up to Duke's and Bull Durham, and I learned to roll cigarettes then. All my shirts had little bitty holes in them. I don't know whether you ever smoked one of them or not. But you'd roll a cigarette up, and you'd be smoking it, and be a little piece of that tobacco would fall off on your shirt, and it'd burn a hole in your shirt. Uh-huh. My mother, that's how she caught me smoking cigarettes. My shirts would all have holes in them. But
you mentioned the cockfights. Excuse me, the cockfights off the square.
Oh, you bet.
At the very beginning here.
Yeah.
Did the boys trade for roosters and?
Yeah, we'd go down there at that Klotfelter's poultry house, and everybody'd have an old game rooster, old Shanghai rooster. That we'd get them and get the bugs off of them. That's the first thing you had to do was get the bugs off of them, because they'd be lousy and mites and everything. We'd get that all off of them, and they had long spurs, and we'd take glass and we'd scrape that spur till we just get it right out to a needle point. And then we'd fight them. 50 cents. $1 was, man, you sure enough had to have a good chicken to fight one for $1. 50 cents is about the biggest we could ever come up with. 10, 15 cents, maybe a quarter, something like that. But now once in a while you get an old rooster that was pretty darn tough, and you'd match him for $1. It'd be 3 or 4 of them get in on this $1.
Now there'd be an audience of guys
No. There wouldn't be no audience nowhere. We'd be a bunch of us boys would be off out down in the brush somewhere, fighting these chickens.
Betting on them among yourselves.
Yeah, just among ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd put the word out there's gonna be a chicken fight this Saturday afternoon. Be there if you want to. And that's where we'd all congregate.
Now, was that considered to be illegal at the time, or was it still?
No, it wasn't too. The law didn't bother us any. Of course, I'm sure the law knew we was down there fighting, but they didn't bother us because we wasn't hurting anything.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything about doping a chick in there. There wasn't no alcohol or anything like that involved in our business down there then. I'll never forget Miss Kitty Russell give me a big old yellow Shanghai rooster. Oh, I was tickled to death over that rooster. He was a great big tall rooster, and he had the awfulest set of spurs you ever saw on him. And I didn't have a sack or anything to carry him home in. I just put him under my arm. And I'm telling you, man, I had more chicken lice and mites than you ever seen when I got home. I was covered up, and so was he. But Mama got me in the house and cleaned me up. I cleaned the old rooster up. And Mother raised big yellow Buff Orpington chickens. I took this rooster out there and I set him down in there in her chicken pen. I didn't think anything about it. That night and I come in, Mama was the maddest woman you ever saw. She grabbed me with one hand and she like to wore me out. Now, I'm telling you what, she like beat me to death. I said, Mama, what's this all about? That rooster you brought home has killed my big Buff Orpington rooster. Oh, man, I'm telling you what, she was mad.
So that rooster was already a fighter.
Oh, yeah, he'd fight. Ooh, he'd fight. And I done scraped them spurs, scraped them with a piece of glass. Mm-hmm. And they was just sharp as needles. Man, he'd hit you with them and blood would fly. Oh, I'll tell you what, Mother sure did get excited over that.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters you were growing up with?
None.
None.
I'm the only child.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is the only child.
Now, who did you marry?
I married a girl by the name of Thelma Cathy at Randolph, Texas. I met her. She was working behind the soda fountain on the east side of the square. There was a soda fountain in there. And that's where I met her. And I got to going with her. And them boys out there at Randolph, they come to me one Saturday afternoon and says, don't go up there to her house to get her. Said, we don't want you out here. Said, you stay in Bonham. I said, now, boys, I'm going to tell y'all something. I'm pretty foolish about that girl. And I might just marry her. I hadn't thought too much about it, but since you boys are telling me not to come back, I said, I'll tell you what I'm fixing to do. I'm going back to Bonham, and I'm coming back. And I'm going to get her. And I said, fellers, don't try to keep me from going up there because I'm going. And I had the difference with me, laying in the front seat. I was with another. I didn't drive. I had a friend that had a car, and he had a girl, and we'd go to picture shows and things like that together. And I went up there and got her, and we got pretty serious about it, and we got married.
And when was that? Do you remember what year that was you married?
1946. 1946. I had just come home from overseas, and really I didn't care whether the schoolhouse stood up or the woodpeckers ate it up. You know, I had been over there where it just really didn't make any difference. You understand what I'm saying?
You're talking about your military experience.
Mm-hmm. And I come home, and I'd done a whole lot of things that a man ought not to have done, but I did it. And I got to going with her, and I decided the life I was living was fixed to get me killed. And me and her was pretty thick, pretty crazy about one another. And we just got married. Sure did. And that was a long time ago.
But you're still living together.
I guess so.
Right.
Yeah.
Since 1946.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about your military career. Were you drafted or did you
Yes, sir, I was
volunteer?
drafted. I was absolutely drafted. I got one of those envelopes that says greetings. Yes, sir, I sure did.
And what year would that have been, do you remember?
1944. I went to San Diego, California, took my boot training there, and I got a 10-day leave. I come home and went right straight back to San Diego after my leave was up, and shipped out to overseas. I went aboard this destroyer, the Mertonelle Abley, and I stayed aboard her till my eyes got so bad I couldn't. The sun reflected off of the water under my eyes. I wore glasses at that time, and I could hardly see anything. And the skipper noticed it, and his name was Kelly. And he put me on the beach in Pearl Harbor and said, "I'll be back after you." The last time I ever saw him. He was a wonderful man. He was a real good skipper. He's a little crazy, but he was a good skipper. You know what I'm saying? He was. Yes. He didn't try to be better than the men, the enlisted men, or anything like that. He was. He mixed with us, come by and tell us stuff and everything like that. He was a nice fella.
Now, about how many men would have been on a ship like that?
Oh, I don't really know how many men was on there.
You mentioned, though, that he didn't come back and get you.
No, he went from Pearl Harbor to Iwo Jima, and they developed what they called a picket line. It was a line of ships all the way around this island, and they laid out there so far and shelled this island. They shot 5-inch shells in there, is what was on the destroyer, and he's shooting them 5-inch shells over in there trying to sink it in.
Into Iwo Jima.
Yes, into Iwo Jima, like that. And there were 2 kamikazes. One of them hit us in the after section and one in the forward section. Broke us right half in two, and they went down.
What was the name of that ship?
Abley.
Abley.
The Mertonelle Abley. Sure was.
Was sunk there.
Yes, sir. She's sunk there. She's out there right today. And I would have been on her if he'd got back and picked me up.
And he went down with the ship?
Oh, yeah, he went down with the ship. He was killed. I'm sure he was killed.
So you were back in Pearl Harbor when you heard about that?
No, I guess I was in Pearl Harbor, and we checked the bulletin board every day to see when it was going to be shipped, if it was going to be shipped out anywhere. Well, I come in from breakfast one morning, and I stopped there at the bulletin board, and there was my name, be lashed up, seagoing fashion, and be at the dock, and you will go down and pick up the President Jackson. The President Jackson was a transport ship. Nasty. Ooh, it was nasty. The English had it. And they had hauled live hogs and chickens and cattle, and you can imagine what it would be like. And I went aboard that, and we went straight to the Marshall Islands.
Now, what were you carrying? Were you still carrying livestock on it?
No, there wasn't any livestock on it. Mostly it was personnel.
Oh, soldiers?
Yeah, soldiers, Marines, and Navy men. And
your ship was accompanying the...
No, I was on this President.
You were on?
I was on the President Johnson.
Oh, okay.
And we went to the Marshall Islands. They pulled up at the pier, and I went ashore there, the Marshall Islands. And I stayed there till I come home and got discharged out, making fresh water. Well, at first, though, I went there. I was in the machine shop. Propellers, they were called screws, off a landing craft. They would come in, and maybe they'd hit a log or a piece of cable or something like that, and knock a hole in it or something like that. It'd bend it or something. I had molds that I put this screw on, and I get the damaged part of it red hot and take a rawhide hammer and beat it down. You know, get the right curvature on it. And if it had a hole knocked out of it, I would take it off of there and bronze it back with, bronze rod. And I'd fill those holes and split places up. And then we'd have to file it down to where it would be balanced. You had to test everything, be sure that everything was perfect. And then it would go back out and go back on a landing craft or something like that and go back to sea. I started out there, and then no boy got dead. He liked to die. Something got the matter with him, and he was a water tender. And they come to me and said, "Would you like to go on this water tender?" I said, "There ain't nothing to it." I said, "All you got to do is just sit there and watch them 4 big distills run and check the fire on them and mix your chlorine up and everything." And I said, "Yeah, I'll take that." And I went over there into that. And I was making fresh water for 13,000 men at that one particular time. And that's where they sent me back to the States for a discharge. I got discharged in Houston, Texas.
Were you there when the atomic bomb was dropped on?
I was there
Japan?
when they made the bomb for Bikini. I was on that Marshall Islands. Yes, sir. I could stand in my tent and throw a rock and hit the B-29 that dropped that bomb. Go yonder. I'll be right.
You said that you were at the Marshall Islands at the time the bomb was dropped?
The Bikini bomb.
Now, tell me about that. I'm not familiar with that phrase.
All
Bikini
right.
bomb.
The Bikini Islands is a group of islands out there, and that's where they dropped the experimental bombs. They had ships, different kinds of ships, and I don't know what all they had on the island itself, but they dropped it to see what the damage would be to it. And it's real funny. They were building this thing and putting it together when I got to come home. I was discharged out, and I was at home in the living room. Mother and Daddy had gone off to work, and I was sitting there. And I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I got drunker than a stewed owl listening on the radio. Because I'd left a lot of friends out there, and I didn't know what kind of shape they was going to be in. And I got
So the war wasn't over then, quite yet, when you came home?
Yeah, it is over. You see, August the 15th, 1945 is when the war was over. But this Bikini test was fixed up before then. And I stayed out there till in the 46.
I see.
And yeah, it was all over with. And they dropped this bomb out there, and they saw how devastating it was. And they went right on to Nagasaki and over there and dropped the big bomb on Japan. And
but you were talking about your concern for your colleagues and
yeah.
friends that were still there.
Yeah, my buddies and everything. Yeah, they were still out there on Kwajalein. That was the island that I was on. It's the big island in the Marshall Islands. And
were you very aware of the struggle that was going on for the taking of Iwo Jima at the time? You mentioned.
No, I didn't know anything about it. I was there in Pearl and getting my glasses fixed and everything, and I really didn't know anything about what was going on, and I sat there and I waited, and I couldn't find out anything.
Yes.
And then that's when I found out that she was sunk.
Yes. The one you should have been on.
Yeah, the one I was supposed to have been on.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was lucky. There was a lot of them that wasn't lucky.
It was soon after you came back then from the war that you married.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did Thelma get in? You said she was working here in town. Did she come in a car or something and go back out to Randolph?
I don't really know how she got to town. I think sometimes she was living up here in town, and then I think she would go home on the weekends and things like that. But them boys out there, they didn't want me coming out there getting their girls. And I told them, I says, hell, I may come out here and marry that old gal. You can't tell. And I did.
Right.
They didn't like it a whole lot, but...
Now, how many children did you have?
We have 3.
And they are?
There's Mike and Kathy and Roger.
Now, Mike lives around here in Bonham.
Mike lives in town. Kathy lives in Allen. And Roger lives at Lamasco.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
Oh, now let's see. Mike's got the one girl alive. He lost her brother. Kathy's got 2 children. And Roger's got two boys.
So you get to see quite a bit of them, though?
Well, I don't get to see as much of Kathy as I do Mike and Roger.
Right.
I don't get to see. I see them. I talk to one of them nearly every night. Be one or the other of them I'll call.
You moved out here into what I would call the Nunley community.
That's right.
In 56? Or
56.
You knew another woman named Kitty Bohannon?
Kitty Bohannon.
Now, that would have been earlier in your life? Or
Yes, sir.
Who was she?
Kitty was Kitty Russell. And her brother, Bud, and don't ask me what his first name was, Bud's all I ever knew, owned this place. You know where the 7 Oaks were?
Sure.
I can remember the 6 of them, but I can't remember the 7th one. They always told us that they hung a nigger on the 7th one, and it died. But I can remember 6. Well, straight down that road where the 7 Oaks stood, it went down and it turned back to the right. Right there in that corner is where Miss Kitty and Bud lived. And this house, when it was built, was a log house. The walls about that, 2 or 3 foot thick. And they had gone in there and put weatherboarding on the outside of it. And she had a big plank fence. It was planks and wire all the way around the house. And when you want to go down in the bottoms, down around Bodark, down in there, you'd go up to the gate and you'd call, Miss Kitty, are you at home? And if she was there, she'd come to the door. Come on in, boy. Or you could open the gate and you'd go in. But the house was way up off the ground. And up under this house was geese and dogs, cur dogs. And I want you to know they'd eat you up. She'd have to stand on the front porch, on the porch there to keep the dogs off of you. Right at the corner, the house was kind of an L-shaped house like that, you know. And right here, this corner here was the kitchen. And there was a big well, dug well right there. And had a water bucket sitting on this well, and I'll bet you it was inch thicker with moss that grew up. You know how moss will grow on something in the water?
Sure.
You drop that bucket down in there, pull it up full of water. It was a dipper hung there on the well, and you get your drink of that, and that's the coldest water you ever drank.
But there was moss in the bottom of the well bucket.
Bottom, the sides and the bottoms, you bet.
Of the bucket?
Yeah, the bucket, yeah. Yeah, she never did clean it up. She was a mean old girl. Now, I'm going to tell you what. She and I become a good friend. And she and I were sitting on the front porch there one day talking, and there was a colored man come up the road there, turned, driving a wagon in Tim, and he had a load of bones on it. Miss Kitty was very blunt. You'd have to have known her to appreciate her. Hey, nigger, what do you got in that wagon? I got a load of bones. Where'd you get them bones? Back off down yonder so-and-so place. Them's my bones. You take 'em back down there and put 'em back where you got 'em. You ain't supposed to get them bones. And she meant just that.
What was he going to do with the bones?
He gonna sell 'em, I guess. But he had a wagon load of bones, and she made him take 'em back down there and unload 'em. She sure did.
Now, would that have been in the direction of Boardwalk Bottom down there?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her daddy.
Go ahead.
Her daddy was Jim Russell. They called him Blind Jim because he was blind. When he took a nose to go to town, he took an old gray mare up to a buggy. He had whiskers way down low close to his belt. And he'd get in that buggy and he'd go to whooping that old mare and a hollering and a screaming at her. And them whiskers would be flying out behind him and him just be beating the devil out of that mare. Dead run all the way to town. He was a character. And Bud was bad to drink. He got drunk there one night, sitting up there in the living room. They had a fireplace that I could lay down in. It was that big. And they used an enormous backlog back in there. And he got drunk one night and he stood up to move something, and he fell over backwards and his arm went down behind that backlog. It was like to burn a hand plumb off. It was awfulest hand you ever saw. It burnt up and everything. And it had 3 or 4 little spots of pus come up on it. He was out there in the yard and seen the safety pin laying there in the yard. Picked that safety pin up and he opened them pus pockets up with that old rusty safety pin. It's a wonder he hadn't died, but he didn't. Then he got over that and he got drunk again and went to sleep in front of this fireplace. Had his feet crossed. And his coal of fire popped out between his shoes, like to burn a foot off.
Now, was that her brother?
It was her brother.
Yes.
Yes, her brother, you bet. He was a character.
Now, was the father still, the blind father still living
No,
there?
the old man was dead.
Okay.
Yeah, he was dead.
Now, did they own that land down
Yes,
toward?
sir. They owned all that land. That was the Russell Bottoms.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They have cattle on it, or other people living on it?
No, they had cattle on it.
Cattle on it.
And across the road, catty-cornered, it's still there. It growed up just like it was when I was a kid. You couldn't hardly get through it. It was called the hog pasture. That's where they turned their hogs loose to let them run. They didn't pen hogs up like they do now. They run them. And she had a big, big flock of geese, big gray geese. And every morning, she'd get up, she'd go across the road and open that fence, that gate up across the road. Then she'd come back and she'd open the yard gate. And them dogs would take them geese across the road into the hog pasture. And that afternoon, late, before dark, she'd holler, "Come on, dogs. Let's get 'em in." And them dogs was trained to go down there and then run them geese in. And they'd cross that road and go right in there, go right up under that house, and that's where they spent the night, them dogs and them geese. I've seen that old lady sitting on the front porch in a cane-bottom chair with a goose on its back, and she put that goose's head between her legs, down like that, and she'd sit there and pick them feathers off that goose. I've seen the blood running off her legs where them geese had pinched the blood out of her. I've seen that.
For a feather bed? Or
for a feather bed, feather pillars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd say, Miss Kitty, why don't you put a sock on that roof, that gander's head? Oh, it's too much trouble. Just keep a picking. And that old goose just pinching the food out of her.
And were you just a youngster then?
Yeah, just a big old
and
kid.
You'd go out there too?
Oh, yeah, I'd go down there. I spent many, many hours.
Did you get to ride horses back on her place, or did they have horses?
Yeah, they had horses. Yeah, we'd ride horses. I'd go up to Ike Biggerstaff's saddle barn, and we'd exercise horses down. That was a dirt road down through there, see?
Right.
And we'd ride down through there. And, oh, I knew Miss Kitty real well. She was something else.
You must have heard a lot of stories that she told or other people told. Something about some gold down there? Now, that may not have been a true story, but...
Well, it was told for the truth. A man by the name of Collie Cobb come in here. He had a wife and 2 daughters. And I'm going to tell you the truth, they didn't look like they'd had enough to eat in 3 or 4 days. They was in bad shape. He was breaking new ground down there at where the bridge goes across Bodark. It was an old plank bridge. And over here was new ground, and he was breaking that out with a team, plowing there one morning and going along just fine. All of a sudden, them mules just stopped. Get up, he'd say. The old mule would lean into them harness, couldn't move it. Well, he backed them up and pulled the plow back out of the ground and looked down there, and there was a bale, a wire bale, sticking up out of the ground where this plow had hit it. He dug a 3-legged cast iron pot out of the ground. Now, this is strictly hearsay. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do know this much. After he supposedly found this pot of money, he got wealthy. When Collie Cobb died, he was pretty well off.
Well, Mr. Lindsey, I've heard of Collie Cobb for years. My dad would speak about Collie Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
Did he own land around somewhere?
Yeah, he did after he found that money.
Yes.
But he didn't own nothing. An old hack automobile when they come to Bonham. Yes, sir. This is true.
About what years would that have been? I'm trying to think because of my own memories of hearing his name.
That was years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago.
Okay.
I don't even remember.
Okay.
But that happened right down there. He sure did. He was breaking new ground with a breaking plow and a team. He sure did.
And later became a wealthy man.
Yes, sir, he did. Now, when he died, his family was well off. Yeah, they had plenty of money.
Named Irwin Smith.
Mr. Irvin Smith?
Was he the photographer?
Yes, sir.
What do you remember about him?
I don't remember him other than him being a big, tall, slim-built man. But I remember he had all kinds of saddles, hair ropes, and stuff like that. I remember seeing them. He had a rope made out of horsehair. They pulled it out of the horses' tails. And hair bridles and things like that. I remember him, yeah.
Well, he was a friend of Catherine Keaton, and visited out in the tulip community
Yeah,
and had some land around Lamasco or somewhere, as I
Yeah.
understood it. But he was very famous as a photographer.
He was a famous photographer. He surely was.
Cowboy life.
Yeah, he was like you say, a cowboy photographer, and he took all of his pictures with a little box camera, little Kodak box camera. He sure did. Yeah, I remember him. I've seen a lot of. He had a pair of cavalry boots. I wanted them boots so bad I couldn't be still. They, when you put your foot down, the top of the boot come up here like this, up above the leg, and it was cut out to where you could do that.
Yes.
They were dispatch boots. A dispatcher or a messenger wore those boots. He kept his messages stuck down in this. There was a pocket in there, and he put his messages in that. And, of course, when he stood up, you couldn't see that because that boot come up on his leg.
Above his knee.
Above his knee.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see the messages in there. Yeah. Oh, I wanted them boots so bad. Kid, you know.
Yeah, sure.
And they always told it, they said, if you laid down on the ground and took that hair rope and circled it around your bedroll, a rattlesnake or any kind of snake wouldn't crawl across it. Well, now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I've heard it all my life.
Yes, I have too. Right.
They said, reading of it, them hairs would stick up between the working part of a snake's body and they wouldn't crawl across it. But I've heard that all my life.
Have you been active much in political life or aware of the things that go on in the county?
No, I never was. I never did take an interest in it. I was always trying to make a living.
Sure.
I had these 3 kids. And
were you living, now let's see, you moved out here in 56.
Moved out here in 56.
So you could have reared your children out here.
I raised, well, let's see, Roger was born where we lived out here. Yeah. Mike and Kathy. Kathy's got a scar on her head right today where Roger hit her a stick of stove wood. She was a bad habit aggravating him. And she was sitting on the front porch. And he was running and playing. He jumped up on the porch. She reached out and caught him by the leg and tripped him. He never said a word. He just got up, walked around out there, and he found him a stick of wood. He just knocked the living hell out of her. Boy, she come as to screaming and hollering, he's killed me. And I said, "This, hush. Right now." I said, "You had that coming. I saw you when you tripped him. And it's your fault. Just don't hear no more of it." And that was the end of that. She didn't trip him no more. But I got 3 good kids. They've all done well. Roger's doing just exactly what Roger wants to do.
What does he do now?
He cuts wood for a living, and he, now this is crazy. He cuts wood, runs a wood yard right down there at Lamasco. It was between Lamasco and Ivanhoe. And I talked to him last night, and I said, "What have you been doing?" He said, "I'm clear cutting 10 acres up at White Rock Cemetery out there around Bailey somewhere of cedar." Well, I said, "That ain't too hard." He said, "Easiest money I ever made in my life." That all I'm doing is cutting them cedar sprouts off close to the ground, and if there's a big tree there, I'll cut it up just as far as I can reach. And I said, "Man, it's easy money."
You clearing land for somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he'll do that. And if you've got land you want broke, plowed, he'll plow it. He just, if you've got a barn to build, he'll help you build that barn.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a jack of all trades, and he does he's just as happy as if he had $1 million.
It's a good life.
Roger got 2 boys. One of them, the oldest boy, he's just as happy doing what his daddy's doing as anything that you ever saw. And the youngest one said, I do not aim to get out there and work like y'all do. Roger told him, said, you better get your education. Because, son, this is all I can give you. I can't give you nothing else but an education. And the kid is a grade A student out at Sam Rayburn.
Great.
Oh, he's smart.
Does he know what he wants to be?
Has no idea.
Yeah.
Has no idea.
Yeah.
But the other boy, like his daddy, he don't. As long as he got a good dry place, a warm place to sleep.
Is he working with his dad down
Yeah,
there?
works every day right there with his daddy.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They was working with a fella, and they got crossways, and they quit. He come to us, me and my wife, and says, will you help me get a log splitter? I said, yeah, we guess we can. Well, he said, they've got one up there at Tractor Supply that I sure would like to have. I said, well, let's go look at it. We went up there, and it's the biggest damn log splitter Tractor Supply handles. We made arrangements and bought it. Now, he said, I'll pay for that when I get my income tax back. I said, you're going to pay for it. You can just bet on that. Or I'll come get it. He said, don't you worry about that.
Talking about Kenny Bohannon?
Kitty.
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 Right.
Kitty Russell's mama and daddy. You know, as you go down the Seven Oaks Road, it kind of makes a kind of a slide off like that.
Sure.
Right back up there to the east, up on the high ground, there's a not real nice home back up there. And right behind that home is where the old original log cabin was built. Now, Mike has got some lead balls that I dug out of that log cabin.
Mm.
And Miss Kitty told me that her folks shot Indians down there on that creek trying to steal hogs.
Mm-hmm.
They shot Indians out of that house, and they shot back, Indians shot back up there. And I took my pocket knife and dug a, old Mike's got several lead balls that were shot into that house. If he's supposed to have them, because I give them to him.
What is this other name? Did she marry a man named
Bohannon? Yes,
Bohannon?
sir. She sure did.
And what do you remember about him? Was he living there at the time? Or
He lived down there with Miss Kitty.
Okay.
Yeah. Kitty'd been married 2 or 3 times. She married Bohannon. She married a brewer. And she married a Ratliff. Now, Ralph Brewer was Kitty's son. And, of course, he's dead. And I think Miss Ruth is still alive. And she married Ralph. And they had a daughter, and her name was Ruth, and she died. I think she killed herself. I don't know why, but I think that's what's happened there. But, yeah.
Do you remember what we used to call the poor farm out there?
Yes, sir.
Those red brick buildings?
And red brick building. Do you remember when they had that cannon deal behind it out there?
Now, was that connected with the
Yes,
poor
sir.
farm?
Connected with the poor farm. This big red brick building sit right there where, I'll swear, right on the corner of 56 and Lipscomb.
Yes.
Right there on that corner. Mm-hmm. All right, right behind that was a big, long metal building. And they had a public cannery. They'd kill beef, and they'd can beef, and they canned all kinds of farm vegetables, and put it in cans. Yes, sir.
Did they sell it to the public? I mean, was it a commercial thing?
Nope. It was for the people that needed it.
that lived out in the county or lived there in
Lived there.
the county home?
They lived there at the county home, and you could take a beef down there yourself, and for a certain percentage of that beef, they'd can it for you, and things like that.
Now, was it called the Poor Farm all that time? That's what we always called it, but it was.
That's all I ever heard it called, the Poor Farm.
And that's where people who were living in the county who became homeless? Or?
Homeless and destitute, they could go there and live. Now, they had a farm. Do you know where the dog pound is?
Yes.
Back east of the dog pound was the Poor Farm, where they farmed out there, raised vegetables. And I've been in the cabins at where those people lived. If you
you mean on 56 there, what we called it, or were there other cabins somewhere else?
These cabins were down there on that farm.
On the farm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you screwed up here in town and had to go to court, and a judge sentenced you to so many days, months, or years on the Poor Farm, mister, I'm going to tell you, one trip would do you. Them beds that them old boys slept on was boards with a shuck mattress.
Did they have guards out there?
Yeah. You went out there and you got up at daylight and you went to work. And I think you might have got one meal a day. And you put them together with a lantern and you took them out with a lantern. At daylight till dark. And you worked the Poor Farm.
Now, was that to grow food for
Yes,
the people who were living on the Poor
Yes,
Farm?
sir. Yes, sir. It was self-contained.
I don't remember how many rooms or compartments there were been there.
There, I believe, in my best recollection, that was a 3-story building. I know it was 2, and I'm pretty sure it was a 3-story building. And there was rooms all down through there.
Did you see much of what we would have called hobos or tramps?
Yes, sir.
During your early years?
Yes, sir. I sure did. I'll never forget one morning, Daddy and I were eating breakfast. We'd gotten up early, and somebody knocked on the back door. Daddy went to the door, and there was a man standing there. He said, "Sir, have you got anything that a man can do to earn his breakfast?" Daddy says, "No," but he said, "Here's a bar of soap and a towel." He said, "There's a faucet right out there. You go out there, clean yourself up, and I'll fix you some breakfast." Well, Daddy come in there, and he fixed the old boy bacon and eggs, or I don't remember what all it was, but anyhow, it was a darn good breakfast.
Sure.
And the man, you never seen a man take such a bath as he pulled his shirt off, and I want you to know, he took a bath. And he got himself cleaned up. Daddy said, "Come on in here and eat." And he said, "No, sir, I won't come in your house." But he said, "I'll sit down right here." Daddy gave him that plate of food and a cup of coffee, and he sat right there and eat it. And he thanked us very politely, nicely. And he went out to the front, in front of the house there on the curb next to the street. And he squatted down there and he made some kind of marks. I don't remember what the marks were, but they were different colors on this curb. And that's the last hobo I ever saw. Right there.
Was that a sign to other?
I would assume that that's what it was. I don't know.
A sign of some sort.
It was a sign of some sort that I don't have no earthly idea. But I went out there, kid watching.
Yes.
And when he got through and walked off down the street, he had a bundle on his back.
Yes.
And he walked off down the street like, man, I couldn't wait till he got out of sight to where I could go out there and see what that was. But it was not very big. but it was a different kind of signs, and lines and things. And then there was a hobo come there again, and it didn't nobody ever bother us. Back then, hobos would steal something to eat or something they could sell. They'd do that. And down, do you know where Frank Dawson's barn is?
Not now. No, where was it?
Do you know where the old water plant?
In town there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, right straight down that street is a big metal barn. That was Frank Dawson's. Right south of that barn down there, the railroad was there, and there was a dump, a brushy place down in there. That was a hobo jungle. And now you could go down there, of course, me being a boy and curious as all get out. I was worse than a goose. I had to see everything. I went down there, and there was a bunch of hobos down there. And they had a big old pot sitting there on the fire. Every once in a while there'd be a hobo come in and he'd walk over at that pot and he'd put a can of something in it. Maybe a can of tomatoes or a can of potatoes, whatever he could steal out of a grocery store. I know he stole them. Mm-hmm. And everybody was welcome to put something in the pot. And one of them hobos said, "Boy, you better get the hell out of here." He said, "You don't belong down here." He said, "You go on back home." And that was a hobo jungle. It was right down there.
And would that have been in the 30s or?
Yes.
In the 30s,
yeah. In the early 30s. Middle 30s, somewhere along in there, yeah.
Hard days, hard times for people.
Hard times. Absolutely hard times. That's so right.
Did you ever know anybody who worked in the cotton mill down there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I knew a lot of people worked at cotton mill.
Now, was that a 24-hour operation? They keep that going?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll tell you a little funny story about that cotton mill. They all decided they'd go union. Well, the man that owned the cotton mill's name was Higginbottom. Mr. Higginbottom drove up down there one day and they was all struck out there in front. He got out and said, "Boys, what's your problem? We're going to strike." He said, "Tell you what you do." He said, "You go ahead and strike. And I'll lock this damn thing up and it won't never be opened up again." He said, "Then what are you going to do?" And the man that was a spokesman for all of them says, "We're fixed to go back to work, Mr. Higginbottom." Mm-hmm. And they went back in the building and went to work.
Now, I've heard of Higginbottom. Did he live around here, or did he live in Sherman or somewhere else?
I think he lived in Sherman.
Right.
I think he did.
Mm-hmm.
But he owned that cotton mill. And he told them, he said, "I don't aim for it to be a union mill at all. So I don't aim to pay no union wages or nothing else. I'll lock the damn thing up." Mm-hmm. And he did. He would have locked it up.
And would that have been the early 40s? Or?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right there on Powder Creek, out there where that bridge is, there was a big cafe, Katie Cafe. I've heard my daddy talk about it. I never did see it, but I heard him talk about it. He said there in the kitchen, in the kitchen, they had a big hole cut in the floor. And the cook would open up a can of stuff, and he'd throw that empty can in that hole. And that was across the creek. Hmm. It was built over the creek.
Yes, yes.
That water had that empty cans on down the road.
On down the road, yeah.
Yeah, he'd take them off. I've heard him talk about that.
Were you ever involved in what we called hog killing?
You bet.
In the country?
Yes, sir.
How did it happen up here in town?
I don't know about up here in town.
Oh, somewhere else.
But I can tell you about what it done in Randolph.
Oh, in Randolph. Okay.
Where my wife had come from. I woke up one morning and I heard a pig squealing. It was renting an apartment. Well, I jumped up and went to the window. I seen a shoat running around out there. I said, "I'm going to catch that shoat." She said, "You're crazy." I said, "I'm going to catch him." Well, I caught the pig. Little old, he was poor. I run him down, caught him, put him in a sack. And I took him out to her mother's. They lived at Randolph. And they raised the pig, fed it. I furnished, bought corn and stuff. And they had hogs of their own. And come the winter time, they killed hogs out there, at her mother's, for the public in Randolph. That one particular time we killed 26 head of hogs.
On a cold day.
Now you talking about a cold day. There wasn't no shed, nothing to break. It wasn't even a fence to break the wind. Now it was cold. We scalded and scraped them hogs. That's back before you learned how to skin one. We scalded and scraped them. You bet. Killed 26 head. And one of her cousins and me was doing the killing. Man lived on out there a little ways. He sent us word, said, "I've got a big hog. I'd sure love for you to kill him today." Well, they sent us out there after him. Well, we went and got the hog, shot it, loaded it in the trailer, and brought it back up there and scalded it and scraped it. We got everything ready, had it gutted and scraped and everything ready for the man to cut up. We delivered the hog, and this farmer's son, great big old strapping boy, he come out the back door and he said, "Well, looks like y'all done a pretty damn good job." And me and her cousin picked this hog up by the legs and just slung it out on the ground and drove off. That sorry devil wouldn't come help us. We done that. And she done the cooking.
Your wife?
Yeah, she done all the cooking. And they had a big long dining table. We eat in shifts and never did stop. We just.
You mean on hog killing day?
Yeah, hog killing day we done that.
Yeah.
And
you rendered the lard too? And
yes, sir.
Had cracklings?
Yes, sir. Sure did. We got through that night. It was about midnight when we got through with everything and got our meat cut up and laid out up on the top of the smokehouse there, a little shed-like deal, and let it cool out. Mm-hmm. So we could work it up the next day.
Mm-hmm. Did you make sausage or?
Oh yeah, hand ground.
Yes.
With a hand grinder, made sausage. And I done the lard rendering. Well, I sat out there. I sat right by that pot, stirring it with a wooden paddle, keep it from burning. And it commenced to rain. Mm. Well, her mother run out there with a parasol. Well, I opened this parasol up and I holding it over this pot, stirring it.
Of course, it had a fire under it.
Oh yeah, it had a real hot fire under it. And her mother hated whiskey with a purple passion. Now, I mean, man, you could just mention whiskey and she'd go berserk. But I'm sitting out there and it's cold as the devil and raining, stirring this lard. I couldn't quit. And that old lady come out there and she laid a half pint of whiskey right there. Never said a word. Just laid it right there and turned around and walked back in the house. Man, I snatched that whiskey up. And I drank that whiskey that day.
Stayed warm.
I was freezing to death sitting there.
Yeah.
We made 4 or 5 stands of lard. What a stand was, a 5-gallon can was a stand.
But didn't you have a press to press the grease out of the cracklings or whatever it was
We
called?
didn't have a press. We dipped them cracklings up out of that lard and laid them in a cloth. You get on one end, I'd get on the other end, and we'd twist them, that cloth, and put pressure on them cracklings. And
Now, were they just the fat of the pig?
that's it. The hide.
The hide, too?
Yeah, oh yeah, the hide was still there, and the grease was still there. See, the lard, the fat was on the hide, and you rendered that,
Right.
and you twisted that cloth up and that and squeezed the lard out of them cracklings.
Yeah. Right.
And then you put them cracklings over here in
Some
something
of them are
clean.
pretty good to eat.
They were darn good to eat. Yeah, make crackling cornbread, you
Yes.
bet.
I remember crackling corn.
Yes, sir, you bet. But her mother, bless her heart, boy, she hated whiskey. She had a brother that was an alcoholic.
Uh-huh.
And he was mean as a snake when he'd get drunk. And that's the reason she hated it so bad.
Sure.
But she'd found this half pint of whiskey and she brought it out there to me. I drank it. Of course, she knew I was going to drink it. But, man, I was about to freeze to death. And I never burned a bit of lard. All my lard was put in white, as you ever saw. I was lucky, and I wouldn't leave the stand. I wouldn't leave the lard at all. No.
Did they have a smokehouse, or how did they use a smokehouse?
They had a smokehouse, but they didn't smoke anything in it. They just hung their meat up in there, yeah. And but now the old original smokehouses, they smoked their meat. But her mother and uncle and them didn't smoke any meat. They sugar cured it. You rub that sugar cure, buy that Martin sugar cure, and rub it on that meat. And you looked at it every day. You put the joints, you put them at an angle, put a board under them and laid it up there where it was, so that blood and water and everything would drain out. And then you go there and rub that sugar cure on them and everything.
And we're not talking about any more refrigeration in a smokehouse.
No, ain't no
course not.
refrigeration. No,
Did you just hang it in a paper sack or something?
They had cloth sacks.
Oh, cloth sacks. All right.
Yeah, they took a cloth sack and they'd sack that ham and them shoulders, hang them up there.
And that Morton salt would preserve it.
Yeah. Well, see it. If I remember right, and I think I'm right, it took 6 weeks for the meat to cure. I believe that's right. And you hung it there.
Well, Mr. Lindsey, I thank you so much for this conversation today.
Well, sure.
And if you think of anything else we've forgotten, I can come back, like I said.
If you think of something that you would like to ask me or tell me or whatever, I'll just be tickled to death.
Well, I could come back and tell you some of my stories someday.
Be fine.
It occurred to me that you might enjoy listening to some of the interviews that we've done with other people.
I would.
That's what we want people to do, is to hear them and to enjoy it. And that's part of what we're doing with the program right now.
I like old-timey things. I'm not what you say, a real modern person. I like to go to church up here and they sing these new songs. I don't know them. And I'll ask that music director, I say, don't you know any of the old songs?
Like the Old Rugged Cross?
Yeah, and things like that.
Yeah.
He said, oh yeah, I know them, but we don't hardly ever sing them. I said, why?
Yeah,
I said, they tell you a message.
right.
And these new ones, I don't get nothing out of them. My wife and I were going up here to this church, Congregational Methodist Church. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to just quit going to church? I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to church. I want to go to church. I need to go to church. Well, where are you going? I said, I'm going back up here to Congregational Methodist. Well, I'm not going over there. I said, will you take me over there if I can get somebody to bring me home? She said, yeah. Well, Mike and his family goes over there.
I see. I knew they went somewhere.
They go over there at the Congregational Methodist. And Mike says, Daddy, I'll bring you home every Sunday morning. I said, well, I'll pay you for the gas. He said, no, you won't pay me damn dime. Well, I said, son, it's a whole lot of a problem. He said, it's my privilege to take you home. Well, I said, all right. And I go up here, and she goes to Hector. She takes me up here every Sunday morning, and she goes to Hector. Which, that's fine, as long as we're both going.
Sure.
And she's involved in the church. I'm the type of person that I don't want to be involved in too much of anything. You understand what I'm saying? I like to row my own boat, and I don't want to bother nobody. I don't want nobody bothering me. And she goes over there, and I go up here, and I just enjoy I enjoy this church up here.
Growing up in Mulberry in the Methodist Church, we had something called the Cokesbury hymnal.
Cokesbury.
And that had the old-timey hymns.
Yes, sir.
Fanny Crosley's.
Yes. Yeah.
And I grew up with those, and there's just something about that you never get over. It stays with you.
They had a girl up there that belongs to that church. She got up there one Sunday morning going to sing a special. Were you there?
Yes. When they crucified my Lord.
When they crucified my Lord. And that's one of my favorite hymns. And she was supposed to have gotten me a CD of it, but she never did. And I'll wind up with one of these days.
Yes.
But I love that hymn. And you know, it's just the old timey songs is what I like.
Right.
And of course, I can't sing or anything like that, but I try. But I can't sing like I want to sing because I can't read the words.
Sure.
I can't dial a telephone.
Yeah.
Can't watch television. Anything like that. I can go to that barn. I can feed and water my dogs.
Right.
And never miss. I know exactly what each dog gets and everything. I know where their feed pans are laying and where their water buckets are. I can do all that by myself.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yes,
that's
I can. And I can go out here in this carport and I can get an armload of wood. I can come in there at that stove and I can build you a fire.
Sure.
I can do things like that. But I learn it. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Where things are.
Yeah. I memorize things like that.
Yes.
And up here the other Sunday, they had something to do. And I was over at this other church, and they had to go down to the front, and they always were watching to see what I was going to do. Well, I figured out, I said, I need to know how many pews there are down to the pulpit. Well, before everybody got in there, I took my walking stick and I walked by and I pecked each seat as it went down. And there was a piano sitting right here. Well, I felt that piano and everything. They got ready for me to go down to the front. I just got up and walked. I counted them pews as I went down. And that preacher looked at me and he says, now I want to know something. I said, all right, I'll tell you if I can. How in the name of God did you come down here and never bump or stumble or nothing else? I said, I counted them pews. I know exactly how to go down there.
Sure.
Well, he said, that's the damnedest thing I ever saw in my life.
Did you go to church as a youngster? Was the church always important in your life?
No.
Or did that come later? Maybe
it come
after
later.
Your marriage or
after
something?
I was married, yeah.
Yes.
I was pretty much of a hellion when I was growing up. I don't mind telling you I was. I'd done a little bit of everything. I did a little of everything after we got married. I fought chicken. I fought bulldogs. I drank whiskey. And I don't know, it just got to where it was same old 6 and 7. And I just decided I'd just see what it was all about. And I went in there. Right over here at White Shed Church, the old White Shed Church.
Yes.
That's where I started. And I've been going to church ever since.
Well, that's wonderful.
Sure have. But it's like I told a preacher. He says, you need to go to church. I said, no, I don't buy that. I said, it says in the Bible, wherever I am, you shall be there too, or something to that effect.
Yes.
And he said, well, how do you know that you can see God in this? I said, I'm going to give you an example. I said, I'm down here at Llano County, in Llano, Texas, in a deer stand before daylight. Dark as the devil. And the sun come up and it walked down here. And it would skip down to here. Skip down to there. Until it got plumb daylight. And I said, you tell me there ain't a God?
Yeah.
You tell me there ain't a God? I says, I see that old cow out there, that calf was sucking her side there. I said, you tell me there ain't a God? I said, you smell the flowers and the trees and things? Don't tell me there ain't a God. I said, it's wonderful to go to church. You need to go for a comradeship.
Yes.
But you don't have to go to church to be with God.
And you know that?
Yeah, I know that. I sure do. And he said, well, you know, that makes sense to me. I said, well, it makes sense to me. I said, I've done it all my life, and since I've started going to church, I enjoy going to church. I really do. And when I quit this church over here at Exeter and come down here, I told that preacher, I said, now I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going over here and sit down. I don't want to be involved in nothing. You understand? I want to listen to your sermon, sing your songs, and get up and go home. I said, don't call on me for nothing. I don't want to bother nobody, and don't want nobody bothering me. I want to listen to your sermon, get the meaning of your sermon and everything else, and I'll be perfectly satisfied. And that's what I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I go there every Sunday morning. I've got one place I sit, and I count the pews down. I sit down in the 6th pew, and I go right in there and sit down. I don't sit on the end. I sit the next over. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer comes right along and sits right down there.
Right beside you.
Right beside me.
Right.
And her mom and daddy sits down in front.
Right.
She ought to be down
Jody.
there. Mike and Jody. She ought to be down there with them.
Right.
But she sits there with me.
She wants to be there with you.
Yeah. And she and I see she called this morning. That
sure.
is her that called this morning. She'll call me after a while. She's a great kid. I get a lot of fun out of her. You'll remember back years ago and you can't remember what you did yesterday. God, that's the truth. That's the truth. It sure is.
But you remember what happened long ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's very real.
It's just as plain to me seeing my daddy go across that street to that courthouse as if I was looking at it today.
Yes.
Yes, sir. It sure is. It's just that clear. And I was 3 years old. But it's things like that that I think it sticks to a man's brain when he's a child like that. And I think he remembers things like that where trifle things, little piddling things that don't amount to nothing that I remember, and some of the important things I don't remember, but some of them I do. I shouldn't tell you this, but I don't think you're too bad a man. I don't believe in banks.
Oh, yes.
Now, my wife believes in banks. She puts all her money and our money in the bank. But I'll tell you how come me not to fall out with the banks. It's my fault. Nobody else's fault but mine. I went to the grocery store and I bought a big bill of groceries, reached back here for that bank book, and I didn't have that sucker. It done worked out of my pocket. Well, I said, wait just a bit, let me go out the truck. And I walked out to the truck and there I laid my bank book. Well, I said, this won't never happen to me again. I said, I'll carry my money in my pocket. And I go pay off now. If I buy something, reach my pocket and pay for it. I know I've got the money to buy it before I go anywhere. Because if I don't have the money to buy it, I'm not going to embarrass myself and you.
Right.
I ain't going. And that's just the way I am. That little girl says, what do you do to make a living? I said, well, I'm retired, for one thing. But I said, I raise dogs. Dogs? I said, that's right. She says, you mean you raise and sell dogs? I said, I sure do. I just sold a big litter of dogs. Put the last two on an airplane, going to Winona, Texas. She said, never heard anything like that. She said, what kind of dogs do you sell? I said, I raise blue lacies. It's a Texas state dog. And they're blue. Just as blue as they can be. But they come three colors and can still be pure.
Mm-hmm.
They come blue, red, and a tricolor.
Oh.
And I wanted to throw a tricolored pup.
Hadn't happened yet?
It hasn't happened yet. This deer standing hanging right yonder was the last buck I killed. And he was just as wild as any deer you ever saw and just as free as the air.
Mm-hmm.
He was not under any fence at all. He come out of the brush and started up the road from me, and I shot and killed him. And the doe he was after run across the road and stopped, and I shot and killed her.
Mm-hmm.
Sure did. I told my wife when I started hunting, I said, now when I'm going to start hunting, when I kill a buck that I think's nice enough to hang on the wall, I'll quit. And that's when I quit.
Mm-hmm.
I sure did. Yeah. And he was sure enough a pretty thing when I shot him.
Yeah.
Them horns was just as white.
Yes.
The sun hit them and they just sparkled when the sun hit them.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my
I just
privilege.
want to come back and...
It's my privilege. Yes, sir.